Welcome back and thank you for staying with News Diary. Now let's cross over to our sister station, that is Spice FM, where they're having a conversation on Kenya's aborted revolutions. Their guest is Mark Bichachi, who's a communications strategist. I'll see you at 10 a.m.
Into the Kenyatta government, there was, disquiet with what was happening with the JMs and all, and the people, and they were being suppressed, but it was still bubbling under. The More Kenya movement coming out into the 80s with Moi leading into 88s, into 91, then again into 2000, into 2007, as you said, into the demand for the constitution into 2010. And it's been rising, but the people have not just gone back and slept. They always realize that.
Actually, they've gone back and slept.
Have they?
Yes, they have, because this trust deficit we keep speaking of arises because there was an abundance of it at some point. And that probably was our undoing. The faith that when these people were in positions of authority, they will do good by us. Okay? But this particular moment in time, we're seeing for the first time a structured accountability process has been set in motion, where you're being told, it starts with, we don't want this bill, okay? And somebody says, you vote. And we told you we didn't want it, you didn't listen. So this is what we're doing now. And it continues. Now, there are many things that people may find unsavory, but the point is, for the first time in the history of this country, the sovereign has understood that the accountability factor is not somebody you leave in someone's hands. You keep them in check consistently. So they understand this is what you're supposed to do. If you're not doing it, we're watching you. Yeah. And we want to see you doing what you said you would do. Now that, in my mind, is the fundamental change that we're seeing.
Exactly. It's a beginning of it. I agree.
Yes.
I think it's what I kept saying. It keeps morphing. It morphed in the run-up to 2010. It morphed and we said we don't trust individuals. We shall trust systems.
Yes. And
systems shall have counterbalances and checks, and those systems then will make sure that this thing is working. And so we put it in the systems, and the system again is hijacked by the individuals. And now people are like, all right, so even with the system, it's not. But do you see the people doing this thing that they're doing on a daily basis going forward into the next 20, 30 years? It'll have to come back into something.
That is what we have to fight for.
Okay. How?
We have to fight to continue fighting. And put it in perspective. Number one, President Ruto today has a blank slate. Today, he does not need to do regional balance. He does not say, oh, you're Mkamba, you're incompetent, but you're Mkamba, I'll put you in my cabinet. Now,
or if I remove you, I have to replace you
with another Mkamba. Right? Number two, he is free from political debt. Right? Today, he can chart a new vision for this country. But at the same time, he's got a population that has removed itself from the politics of the ballot to the politics of oversight. That 2010 Constitution, brilliant document. We wrote it down. We praised Chapter 6. My friend, I sang that song. Then we decide Chapter 6 is a self-declaration form. Are you a thief? Yes or no? Are you a liar? Yes or no? That's Chapter 6. Right? When we watered it down, it is not because the people did not want it. It's because the people stopped agitating. Okay? We've changed presidents. We've not changed the presidency and how it works. Our opportunity is to help President Ruto define what leadership and democracy is going to be, because he has started listening to the people. Biggest mistake we make is if we, the people, stop talking.
Or we trust that he has heard.
Exactly. Right? We have to assume, for the sake of our country, that this is not maandamano anymore. it should be our character moving forward. So that tomorrow, when there's a chair of a board who's caught in corruption, there's no church to go to, you kneel down to be prayed for. There's no village to go back to say our people are being attacked. And whoever is your boss, whether you are appointed by a CS or a president, they can fire you as quickly as the allegations come up because the Kenyan people are active. The force of the people should make it such that whichever president, MP, governor, MCA we have moving forward has to be accountable not just to the system, but to our people who are awake and aware and will take their civic duty, take it up, not only to recall, that might be a long process, but to make your life very uncomfortable. And one of the things that we must codify today is you get a public job, you must have a public phone number, and Kenyans are allowed to say hi to you when you make mistakes. I don't mean with hands and fists, but talk to you. Now, let me give you another example. The United States, when not parliamentarians, Congress and Senate go on recess, they go back to their various districts and they have town halls. And they are talked to by people. School districts have meetings and people talk about the books in classes. They say, we don't like this book, right? Sometimes they go overboard and they say they don't want books with violence, they don't want books with certain content, and then they find
religious overtones.
Yes, then they find that thing they are banning is the Bible they're trying to defend because it has violence and other things. But that's a side story. But the continued participation of people beyond the election, in my view, is Ruto's best opportunity to be a watershed president. Because only Mwai Kibaki was given the opportunity to do right and start the country afresh. He's been given the same opportunity. We must make sure there's no Anglo-leasing. We must make sure there's a new vision, new direction, new accountability in this country. So we need to move this mandamano from Tuesday to Thursday to every day, everywhere, not Gen Z, millennials, Gen X, Gen Alpha. We need to make it constant. Otherwise, we will face another abortion.
Okay, so that's what I was going to ask you. So then what are the risks towards an abortion of this revolution? What are the risks that we see at this point? Because it seems like everybody's gung-ho at this point at saying, you know what, it's an opportunity to ensure that there's good governance.
Yes.
But that there's a risk to losing momentum. Is there a risk to apathy, lethargy? What?
That's exactly what the risk is. First and foremost, let's remember, we fired 20 people, 21, right? But there are 300 plus parliamentarians. 47 times 2 governors, because they have deputies. Over 3,000 MCAs. Over 600 parastatal heads. Bado mapambano. Because this change that we have embraced as a country, if we stop at cabinet, we've aborted. If we stop at parliament, we've aborted. If we stop at stopping overlapping, we've aborted. We must continue. Not Tuesday and Thursday, but Monday, Wednesday, every day. And not just at President Ruto, not at Rigathi Gachagua. They have an opportunity, honestly, to actually change this country. As long as they agree with the people.
That's true.
They have it. But if the people stop tagging that rope, what will 2 people do against 300 parliamentarians? Let's not forget, there's democracy. but there's the overwhelming power of stupid. There is the overwhelming power of stupid. Because in the middle of this revolution, someone can dare say that the biggest loss they had is to lose 10,000 followers on Instagram. So it's not just the fight against corruption. We must
fight against stupid.
Yes.
Mark, everything that you're saying is true. But then I think the reality of things is that right now there's a critical mass of people because of the event
Yes.
that is unfolding.
Yes.
Right? It's an event. But this critical mass is realistically unsustainable. And that's why in all these places you find that systems then come in where individuals are the ones who drive. And once in a while they call upon the critical mass to help push. Right? So eventually, the reality is we will again retreat and go back to everything that we are doing. Everybody the 100,000, no, almost 1 million people who are consuming X spaces every day. Almost, we were told, 1 billion people who are consuming all this content every day and talking and
Yes.
agitating. It will be the same as what was happening in the 80s, late 80s and into the 90s, where people were sitting at 6 p.m. to listen to BBC because it was giving them information about this push that we are having for multipartyism. And then they went back to their shambas. And they went back to start having a drink in the evening without necessarily having to talk about, lakini ataenda. Right? So we have to know that we are going to delegate it into something. So what is this thing that we are going to delegate it to?
Excellent
In
question.
America, they've given us the examples. Yes, the representatives are coming back to the people, but then there's like a structure. There's a structure that is mobilizing and organizing. Town hall here, this, there.
Yes.
Not everybody in a town goes to the town hall,
Yes.
but there are people who go to the town hall.
Yeah. In fact, you've answered your question. Because not everyone should be concerned about everything all the time. That's not how life works. But everyone is involved in an area of life that they should hold the leaders in that area accountable. So, for example, you are a farmer, okay? You are getting fake maize, fake fertilizer, fake seeds. That requires not only the farmers' unions, but the farmers themselves to hold their parliamentarians, who are supposed to represent them, accountable, to hold the CS of agriculture accountable, and push towards that direction with the goodwill of the country. You are a doctor, you are an engineer. That agitation needs now to fall into not the general move of the people, but needs to fall into the accountability of the various spheres of professional activity and what affects you. So, for example, let's say you're a person living with a disability. What happens in that space should be a space for you to agitate, to create proper facilities for public participation. Because one of the things that President Ruto keeps asking for, yet it is in the Constitution, is public participation. It's not dialogue. It is public participation. But that public participation has been watered down because you write to the general public and you say, please give your views on bridges being built in Karumaindo.
By 5 p.m. on Tuesday.
Yes. What do I know about bridges? Instead, what should happen is you should create focused groups. Who lives in Karumaindo? Who are the engineers who know about building bridges? What are the transport needs of the people in Karumaindo? So what do the transporters need? Put them together properly. The same way they organize conferences for MPs to discuss what they can discuss in Parliament in Naivasha. Do it structurally. How do we do that? This revolution and this president who is listening as at now need to meet not for dialogue. They need to meet at the point where public participation is properly structured with stakeholders, held regularly. In other words, we should know that in every county, we are discussing the budget, national budget in every county, every 1st of April every year, because it's my birthday, right? We should know that we are discussing healthcare every 10th of March every year, so that the people know if I have an issue with healthcare, 10th of March, ABCD Hall in Kariobangi, I'm going there. We don't need dialogue for now. We need to create a structure where government is forced to listen to people consistently, and that public participation must have a weight in whichever policy and whichever law is being passed. So, for example, this finance bill, right? There was public participation. Whether you want to take it in terms of how people complained on social media or how people came on media and talked about it, people talked about it. Yet a majority of parliamentarians refused to listen. Why? Because that parliamentarian will see you in church when he's giving a harambe, and then he'll see you next at elections to lie to you again. When we create a system where stakeholders are consistently engaged and we make sure that those thoughts are what form policy, then we will have created what I call positive tension between leadership and the people, and it continues to be so.
So essentially what we're saying is that you really want to have folks on tenterhooks.
Yes.
Because the likelihood of you misperforming or misbehaving reduces significantly when you understand that people are watching your every move.
Yes. Why do you think Japan, with its incredible debt, has survived? Because a minister will resign because a train derailed. He wasn't driving the train. He was not maintaining the railway. But he takes such responsibility, and the people expect that he will be responsible even for the train driver who he has never met.
You know, for a moment there, I thought you were going to go to South Korea, I think they are ahead of every country on this planet when it comes to jailing their former presidents.
Yes.
But as you said correctly in the beginning, these are movements we've had before.
Yes.
Movements where people are protesting tax. Movements where people are protesting the learning curriculum before independence and saying, no, this curriculum is substandard. People forming their own independent schools because they're saying, the way these guys are teaching us doesn't really help us. You're right. We have had that history as Kenyans. Now, is it that the vigilance that was required was not applied judiciously, or is it that there is something about our politics and the nature of it that is so corrosive that it is impossible to assume goodwill on the part of anyone who aspires to be a political leader or is a political leader? Or are we saying that our lived experience when it comes to our politics is such that the self-seeking nature of people who aspire to be political leaders, and this can't be true of all, because I know political leaders who actually look after the interests of their people. But are we saying that just so that we are on the safe side and that we are on the side of caution, the vigilance should not stop?
Yes.
Irrespective of the goodwill somebody may garner when they get into office, the vigilance must not stop.
Exactly.
And an accountability mechanism must be set in place where you are told, this is what you said, and this is what you are doing, and this is not what we agreed. Either go back to factory settings or leave the job.
Exactly.
That's what you're saying.
Exactly. Because if we don't do that, the political class, especially in Kenya, is used to getting away with murder, literally. Okay? We thought the courts would do it. We thought ESCC will do it. We thought the Cohesion Commission would do it.